Hi, welcome to Midwest Magic Cleaning. My name is Mud, and this week I want to talk about a subject that I get asked about a lot, which is how to clean your house or how to be active while you're fighting depression. Almost every household that I've helped out on this channel have all dealt with depression in one form or another, and it's often the cause of the clutter and the messiness that you see in these videos. Now, I happen to have a special expertise in this subject because I deal with chronic depression. I've dealt with it since I was a child, and I also deal with heavy anxiety. I'm medicated for both. But even with medication, sometimes the depression and the anxiety creeps through, and I find myself in a situation where I'm forcing myself to get out of bed. I'm forcing myself to do the things I don't want to do, and it can be and often is a massive struggle just to exist. So how in the hell do you keep your house clean when you're just struggling just to exist from day to day? Well, what you're seeing in this video is the difference between suffering from depression and actively fighting depression. When you get hit with depression and you find yourself sleeping for 10, 12, 16 hours, and you're struggling just to get out of bed, and you can't really eat because you have no appetite and you're just struggling just to function, those are symptoms of depression, and it's super easy to give in to that and just go ahead and sleep and go ahead and not do anything and start drinking heavily or self-medicating. But when you give in to that, you're the victim of depression. There's no fight involved because you're not pushing back against it. I've been under a fairly significant depressive episode for about 2 weeks, and if I let myself, I would genuinely sleep until sundown. I've had constant panic attacks. In fact, I had just wrapped up a nice snug panic attack right before starting this narration, and my energy is just absolutely sapped. I think a lot of people associate depression with sadness, but I don't really have any sadness. Oftentimes, depression is just a complete lack of energy and a complete almost shutdown of emotional activity, and that's what I'm dealing with. I felt for the past couple weeks like an emotional paperweight. I recently talked to a professor at a large college, a professor of psychology, who specializes in the differences between male and female depression, the way it manifests. And typically what they found is that in women, you get sort of the known stereotypical symptoms of depression like sadness and lethargy, emotional volatility, things like that. Men strangely kind of take the opposite route, where typically they won't release the sadness, or they don't really manifest sadness. They just lose a bunch of energy. And then ironically, they kind of throw themselves into work and they socially isolate. There's a reason that that's important to know, because the way I fight depression as a man is going to likely be different than the way you fight it as a woman. Depression is also a sort of a spectrum that changes from person to person. So that's why there is no cure-all for depression. There is no set of steps you can take that just fits everybody. So for instance, for some people, it may help matters to open your curtains and let more light in as just a small way to kind of help with the depression. But with other people, it may be the opposite. Like they take their curtains down and replace those with live moose to block out even more sunlight, because moose are notoriously not transparent. Very opaque, the moose. And the reason I mention this is because in order to function in a household or a job while going through depression, you have to actively be fighting it and not succumbing to it. And for me, that means doing the opposite of what my brain is telling me it wants to do. So right now, my brain is telling me, don't bother with this narration. I don't feel like doing it. It's difficult to keep my energy up and to sound human, and it would be way easier to just post this video with no narration whatsoever. If I succumb to that, I give ground to the depression. And if I give ground to the depression, then that gives me more time freed up to marinate in that depression. I can't function like that. If I marinate in it, if I sulk in it, I will just turn into emotional sediment. So what you're seeing in this video, and there's a whole bunch of projects on this video, so don't just think it's us ripping up carpet and then that's it, was for the past 2 weeks, I have been throwing myself into projects that I know that I would enjoy once I started them, and it's keeping me active so that the enzymes and hormones in my body can function like normal. Your body physically changes its production rate whenever you're laying down or sleeping, so it's almost like a hack to keep active in order to keep those hormones going and functioning like normal. But the key is recognizing when the depression is trying to win and just fighting back against it, pushing back. It's telling me just no, stay in bed, sleep another couple hours, you'll be fine. And I have to make myself sit up on the side of the bed and say, no, it's time to get up. You're not worried about planning the rest of the day. You're only focused on wake up, get your feet on the floor. One step at a time, and it all starts with no, get out of bed. It sucks because your brain is overwhelming you with thoughts of this would be so much better to just give in to the urges that I'm giving you right now. Stay in bed or get up and get a 12-pack, eat a bunch of junk food, spin kick somebody right in their stuff and junk. Pushing back against those urges is hard. That's why it's called fighting depression and not getting rid of depression. Now, partly because I'm a man and partly because I'm autistic, my way of pushing back against those urges is to find a project and force myself to do it. Unfortunately, about 2 years ago, I hired my oldest son, Jason, to be my personal assistant because as the YouTube channel grows, so does my responsibilities in life, and my time is just completely sank into lots and lots and lots of projects. So I need him to help alleviate that time sink. But that also means that whenever I'm dealing with depression, he's also dealing with my depression. So my fight becomes his fight. And part of my fight during this video and these last couple weeks has been, let's tear up the carpet that has dog pee in it. Let's re-landscape my front yard. Let's level out this old construction project that they didn't level before they left. So unfortunately, Jason just gets roped into those projects, but don't feel too bad for him because I do pay him, so he's making money for this. So the reason that I brought up all that other stuff leading up to this point is because fighting depression starts with recognizing depression and the way it manifests in you personally. So for instance, you may have a personal quirk to where when you get depressed, you play sad music. You have to get to a point that you realize that that's a part of your pattern and realize that that's a symptom of your depression, and that's a thing you need to push back on, because pushing back against that helps break the cycle. So instead of listening to Windmills by Toad the Wet Sprocket, maybe instead you put on Friday by Rebecca Black. I don't know much about music is what I'm saying, but it helps to take the opposite approach. Or maybe your brain's telling you to sit on the couch and eat chips and watch Supernatural from season 1 for like the 8th time. If you recognize that as a symptom, then maybe the better route is to get up and turn off the TV, put away the chips, and find an active chore to do. That's the way that I personally deal with it, is to throw myself into projects that keep my mind and my hands busy. Now, I'm going to throw up a disclaimer here because I will inevitably have people pushing back on this. So the disclaimer is this will not work for everyone. It works for me. And 2, I will have some people who it will work for, but they'll say, I can't do that. That's not realistic. I'm telling those people specifically that the human brain in a depressive state will try to convince you, using any means necessary, that activity is bad and can't be done. Depression likes to protect itself. It's trying to perpetuate a cycle, and the only person who can break that cycle is you. That's the fighting part of fighting depression. That's what you're seeing me do in this part of the video, and really in every part of the video. My dog is on her last legs. She has a disease that is going to eventually culminate in us having to put her down. She's in her last year of life. Because of that disease, she's gotten incontinent and has peed all over our carpets. And once that sets in, your carpets are pretty much ruined. You can kind of clean them a little bit and alleviate the smell a bit, but the only true way to get rid of it is to get rid of the carpet, and that's what we're doing here. We've wanted to get rid of the carpet for a long time, but now we're forced to get rid of it. So I'm using that project as a depression sort of therapy. Part of that therapy is putting a finish line in front of you that's realistic to cross, not some goal that's so lofty that it can't be reached. So don't make your goal, I'm going to make $1 million this week. Make your goal something more reasonable. I'm going to make $100 extra this week on eBay, or from selling videos of me punching moose in the face, or I'll win it in a neighborhood breakdance battle. I'm a hard worker and I do a lot in the day. So for me, an easy to cross finish line was, let's get rid of this carpet. For you, it may be smaller. Let's do a load of dishes. Those those easy to cross finish lines are just a starting point to fighting depression. It's gaining momentum by giving yourself small, easily reachable victories. The more of those finish lines that you cross, the easier they get, and therefore the bigger the goal you can set. So yeah, you may start out with, let's do some laundry or let's do the dishes, but over the course of the week or maybe a month, you gradually increase the scope of your goals until like maybe at the end of the month, your goal is, while my neighbors are on vacation, I'm going to paint their house chocolate pudding brown. That'll teach them to leave while having me as a neighbor. But the key is small steps. Start small. If you try to go hog to the wall, you're going to end up burning yourself out and can actually make your depression worse. So how do I clean my house if I'm suffering through this depression and I can only set small goals? My answer to that is 3 feet at a time. You're not cleaning the kids' room. You're cleaning a 3 foot by 3 foot square on their floor. You're not cleaning the kitchen. You're cleaning a 3 foot by 3 foot section of countertop. You're only worried about that 3 feet. And if after that 3 feet's clean, you have the energy to do another 3 feet, then do that. If it's wiped you out, maybe take a little bit of a break. Take 10 or 15 minutes to reset your brain, see how you feel after that. Continuation, whether it happens now or tomorrow, is still a good thing. Now, this part is really, really important. It's vital that the people who are around you, friends, family, loved ones, know and understand that you're going through a depression. They need to understand that you're struggling and you need some time to accomplish your goals. Normal, mature, intelligent people will recognize that and they'll empathize with it and they'll support you. However, there are a lot of people in this world, even in these comment sections, who are like, I've had 6 kids, I deal with anxiety and depression all the time, you just quit being a wuss, grit your teeth, and get stuff done. I can do it, you can do it. Those are the people who don't understand that different brains react differently to the same situation. Michael Jordan is only 2 inches taller than me, but he could dunk from the free throw line. It would be really easy for me to say that at 6'4", I can dunk from the 3-point line, and so there's no reason that Michael Jordan couldn't do it either. But that's childlike thinking because I'm more athletic than Michael Jordan. I'm stronger than he is, and I have more drive than he does. So it's not fair to say that he would react the same way on a basketball court that I would react, because I'm just built different, son. Those are the same people who look at the current generation and say, you can't survive on 40 grand a year? Man, I raised 4 kids and owned my own home whenever I was your age at 30 or 40 grand a year. Situations do not dictate outcomes. I taught my kids that lesson when they were 8 years old. If you're a full-grown adult who still thinks this way and still reacts this way to other people who are suffering, it's not the world that needs to change. It's you. In my world and in my community, empathy is not an option. It's a requirement. And if you haven't learned that yet, Billy Madison your ass back to school and start over. When picking projects to fight depression, one of the things that I do is I focus on projects that end with beauty. So cleaning a super messy kitchen, whenever you're done, the kitchen looks beautiful. There's an instant transformation at the end of it. Meaning that when you look back on it, even if it takes hours of work, you step back and you take it in as a whole at the end of the project, and your brain instantly goes, holy crap, that's the finish line that you're crossing. You get an emotional high off of that. The other type of project I look for is something that completes functionality. So maybe the bathroom fan is broken and the project is to fix the fan. At the end of it, the fan works and it gives you the emotional high and it gives you a finish line to cross. So the carpet in the first situation is a functionality thing. The carpet wasn't functioning because it was holding on to dog pee smells and making our house smell like a kennel. So we functionally removed that smell. When we were done with that, I needed something beautiful because the floor looks like crap right now. So Jason and I went out and worked on some landscaping. My deck looks terrible. There are weeds growing all over my landscaping. And just the physical act of working in the sun helps produce vitamin D, which incidentally, vitamin D is my adult film name, baby, ladies. But it gets us moving, and the end result, the finish line that we're crossing, is that we'll be able to step back, look at the work that we did, and it instantly looks beautiful. There's a huge transformation between what it was and what it is. Now, the project that we're working on outside isn't necessary in the way that doing your dishes is necessary, but it's keeping us active and it's making an environment that looks better because we've done it. That directly affects your mindset. It not only makes your environment look more beautiful, but it gives you that sense of accomplishment and looking back and saying, I did that. That looks good because of me. That sense of worth is really, really difficult to dig up when you're in the midst of a depression. So finding that sense of worth is like finding diamonds in the kitty litter box. Now, it wasn't lost on me that the work that I was doing out here was a kind of an allegory for the way I was feeling. I was trimming up a bunch of plants that had gone through spring shock, meaning that I took them from inside the house after they'd been there for 6 months, and I brought them back outside, knowing that they'd grow way better in the outside air than they would the inside air. But going through that spring shock means there was a lot of death that happened on those plants. That just happens. My job was to trim off all the death and all the rot so that the new beautiful leaves and the beautiful flowers can spring new. I'm trimming off the crap so that they can have a growth spurt and become stronger and more powerful than they were before. Don't think I've ever used the word powerful to describe a plant, but there we go. And that's kind of what I'm doing emotionally to myself. I'm trying to get rid of the junk so that the stronger version of me can emerge. Now, part of what Jason is here for is to help me just because I'm 50 and I'm getting old and weak and decrepit. But the other part is that he's acting as a body double. People tend to be more productive and more efficient when they're cleaning or working with another person. But remember what I said earlier about men socially isolating when they hit depression. I'm very much like that. And remember, I say I'm autistic a lot on this channel, but it's important because it's a part of who I am. And part of that autism is that I don't like to be around other people, specifically crowds or in social situations where I'm kind of expected to emotionally and intellectually perform conversations, jokes, entertainment, whatever. In just hanging out and working with Jason, we naturally joke with each other and the conversation isn't forced. So I'm taking that part of myself that's both going through depression and autistic, and both of those things are telling me just go play video games in your room and just block out everyone because the silence is golden. It's pushing back against that, and it's fighting the depression by forcing myself to be around somebody who I respect and love, and it's forcing me to have conversations and be socially active. Even if it's just me and Jason one-on-one, I'm injecting social activity into a mindset that's screaming at me to not be social. Oh, while we're talking about Jason, for those of you who didn't know, Jason is going to be a father for the first time, which means I'm going to be a grandfather for the first time. Many members of our channel have asked us to start a baby registry for Jason and his wife. However, his family, me, his mom, his grandparents, we're all taking care of the baby stuff. They're going to be overloaded and swamped swamped with baby stuff. So after talking with the members of the channel, they asked if we could set up a way to donate money so that he can fix a bunch of stuff in his house. Like, for instance, his floors were trashed, his windows need to be replaced, he's got drywall issues. So I started a PayPal. I'll leave a link to that name in the description. And people have been donating to repair Jason's house in lieu of a baby registry. They've already made enough money to get his floors entirely replaced. They're starting that this week. The only other things we need to replace after that would be all of his windows and then to fix the drywall. If you can't afford to do something like that, please don't donate. Jason would be able to repair these things on his own. It would just take a whole lot more time because he'd have to save up to do it. The donations to Jason's House Repair Fund just makes that happen way faster. So we're just trying to get that all done before the baby is due in mid-October. It's going to be a girl, by the way, so suck it. But again, if you wanted to chip in and help repair Jason's house, it's on PayPal. And again, the username will be in the description. And thank you so much for everybody who's donated so far, because that's mind-blowing that within the course of like 2 weeks, we made enough money for him to repair the floors. That is legitimately life-changing for them. So anyway, once we were done with all that, I did a project on my own. My wife is currently in Minneapolis where her family lives, and she was there for like 8 days. So while she's gone, she goes on a vacation like once a year, maybe twice a year. I always try to do something as a surprise for her while she's gone. And usually that's like painting a room or redecorating or buying a nice piece of furniture or something. Something to where whenever she comes home from that trip, she'll come inside and go, "Oh my God." I love that reaction. So we have a bedroom that has never been painted the entire time we've owned the house. It's been this like baby food tan color that's absolutely horrible. And I wanted a color that was different but still relatively neutral. So I found this green color that's kind of a pastel green. On camera, it looks a lot brighter than what it actually is in real life. So I decided to paint the room, redecorate it. She's got kind of a witchy sense of style. So I got a couple witches brooms and a mermaid sign. I got some fake plants and moss to hang off the wall. But the important part wasn't necessarily this room. It was the bathroom. Our bathroom was one of those where we picked the color off of one of those paint cards. And on the paint card, it looked cool. But whenever you put it on an actual wall, it looked like the crayon that no kid uses. The crayon that's always brand new because they never ever use it. And it was sort of this in-between greenish blue. It was really terrible. And Emily's a good painter on canvas, but she's terrible at painting walls. So there was big blotches of green paint on the ceiling and on the floors. And so I decided to repaint it. That's important because I don't have any hard set rules in my house. I'm not one of those guys that's like, here's the rules of the household. I only had one, and that is no purple. No purple anywhere in our house. I hate that color. I don't want it anywhere. At least as far as paint goes. I don't care about the decorations, but no purple paint. I went to pick out the paint for the bathroom, and I was like, let me just look at a couple purples to see if there's one I could tolerate. So I found a very light purple that's so light it's almost white, and then a pastel soft purple that I could use for cabinet fronts, drawer fronts, trim, things like that. And it was not just tolerable, I kind of liked it, but the whole thing is there's a thing that you can do in a relationship where if your partner knows you dislike something, an action, a color, a decorative style, and they do like that thing, if you give in and do that thing for them, especially not saying, hey, I did this for you even though I hate it. You just do it and leave it alone. That says more about your intent and your feelings for them than actual poetry. And the reason I'm telling you that is because sometimes the projects that you do when you're fighting depression can be way more meaningful and way more of a dopamine hit for you if you're doing the project for someone else as a gift. Giving gifts just feels good. So ironically, it's you using altruism in order to benefit yourself, which actually cancels out the altruistic part. But doing a project like that can dramatically change your depressive mindset into a more excited one. Now, I'm not going to BS you here. Doing these things took a dramatic amount of effort. I didn't want to do them. I had to force myself to do them. And I didn't even really feel a benefit from them until I was halfway done or completely finished in some cases. It's a battle, which is why it's called fighting depression. But at the end end of each one of these projects, I did feel better, little bits at a time. I look back and said, I'm glad I did that. I'm happier now having done it than I was before whenever it wasn't done. And I found that there's a tiny bit of truth in the people who I kind of ranted about earlier, the overly aggressive, immature people who just say grit your teeth and do it. You do have to grit your teeth and at least start. I had to tell myself through this whole process, grit your teeth and just move. Move to get out of bed, start in motion, dip the brush into the paint and make a stroke on the wall. I had to tell myself that over and over and over, just move, just do one part of the job that you're getting ready to start. And then once it started, let that momentum roll through. I mean, surfers will tell you that it takes way more effort and way more time to learn how to just stand up on the board than it does to actually ride the wave. That being said, don't surf in your house. You get everything wet, it's weird. Anyway, I'm not good at metaphors. The point is, get yourself in motion. And if you can get past that hurdle, the momentum is way, way easier to ride than the actual starting point. So recognize what depression is. Recognize the way that it manifests in you personally and the symptoms that outwardly and inwardly show. You have to learn to recognize that right off the bat. That's one of the hardest parts, is recognizing when your brain is telling you false information, that it's better to just sleep it off, that it's better to just not eat because all food sounds horrible, that it's better to just get drunk, and recognizing depression for what it is. It's your bully to fight, but it doesn't mean that you can't bring a friend to the brawl. But after recognizing it, the very first step is just move. Get yourself in motion. It's gonna suck. It's going to wipe you out, and there's a really good chance you're going to hate every second of it. But I promise that whenever you cross that finish line and you look back on the things that you accomplished, you will feel better than you did when you started. It's going to take some time and a whole lot of effort, but little by little, especially as you stack up those finish lines to cross, the more of those finish lines that you cross, the easier it gets. Now, that's all to say that these are things you can personally do, but don't discount therapy or possible medication, and always remember that there is no catch-all, one-size-fits-all method for dealing with depression. You may be one of those people where not one thing that I said applies to you or works for you. That's fine. That's not a problem with you. It just means that that's not the right method for you. Just don't give up and keep looking for more methods. You're worth a Google search, man. Members, I will see you this Wednesday. Everybody else, I'll see you next weekend. Later.